Hi, my name's Chris Morley and I work with AUSTRADE. I work in the food and agribusiness team looking after premium food, packaged food and beverages. I'm really excited to help present this guide to you today. This guide was put together by a lot of people at AUSTRADE, particularly in the Australian and Chinese office, and it represents a great way of understanding more about the Chinese market and how you can engage more with this economy. In creating this guide, we saw 10 key trends that are happening in China right now. I'd just like to pick out a few of these before we go too much further. Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities are still rising fast. For a number of years in China, we've known the middle class are moving off the farms and into these Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities and really driving the economy. We're still seeing this occurring now in 2018 and 2019. The other key trend at the moment is new retail. It's blurring the lines of the different business retail models that we see in existence. We're seeing online players such as Alibaba and JD investing heavily in their offline presence, allowing consumers to go into a physical retail outlet, engage with the products, pick them up, try them on, try the taste, and then order from an online area there and have it delivered to their home. Vice versa, we're seeing the online phone a phone being used to place an order online to then have the product picked up from a physical outlet, even prepared a meal right there for you. Another key trend we've seen emerging is that the made in China is no longer second best. There's been a lot of government investment and a lot of process from those within China to really increase the footprint of Chinese food made in China. This has been particularly evident in the past few years. We're seeing more and more competition, not just from international players coming into China, but from Chinese food itself against Australian food. I want to talk briefly about the numbers of exports going to China across the past few years. We've seen significant growth across all categories, double-digit growth in all categories, which is just terrific. Of particular relevance, we're seeing packaged food grow by 45% from 2016 to 2017. This is coming off a fairly low base, but it's growing rapidly, and something that's really pleasing for us here at AUSTRADE. Similarly, we're seeing wine and beverages grow at a 62% rate. Again, fantastic numbers. Interesting, when we look at beef, so meat and livestock, whilst the growth is still occurring at 33% per year, we're actually looking at our market share being hit a little bit. And this is really because markets like the USA are now gaining access into meat and livestock markets within China, where previously they didn't have that access. If we drill down with these numbers a little bit more, we see particularly of interest in the packaged food sectors, things like macadamia nuts. Down here, let me just get my little tool out for you to see. Excuse me, just getting my arrow out. We're seeing macadamia nuts growing at 120% each year. Milk products increasing at over 1,000%. Overall, the numbers we're seeing in the packaged food sectors are just terrific. Products like pastas, cereals that were previously never bought before or weren't bought frequently in China are seeing terrific growth as the Chinese eating habits change to match more of a Western style diet. And what we're also seeing, as I mentioned earlier, was that emergence of an online and offline presence by the likes of Alibaba and JD. They're opening new retail concept stores such as Hema Fresh for Alibaba or 7 Fresh for JD. And these retail concept stores are really seeing terrific growth and terrific engagement with those consumers over there, allowing a new way of engaging with food and having that food delivered to your door. So it's really important we have a look at the different types of Chinese consumers. Too often, people look at the overall number of the Chinese consumer. And what we're trying to do in our guide, the Food and Beverage Market Guide for China, is actually break down the different types of Chinese consumers that you should be targeting as an Australian food manufacturer or brand. And in the next few slides, we're identifying the 4 key consumer demographics that you should be targeting. The first of these consumer demographics is the Jiang family. So their average range is 35 to 54 years old. We're looking at a population currently of about 12 million people, but we see this growing to over 46 million people by the year 2021. This market is a great market for baby, maternity, premium fruit and vegetables. Generally, we see these products in premium supermarkets, through different online outlets, available in hotels, restaurants, and overseas chains within the Chinese region. And these, importantly, these next four consumer demographics that we look at are the consumer demographics that can afford the Australian produce. It's really important to remember Australia produces a premium product, and we're focusing on these consumers who can afford the Australian product and appreciate the value these products bring to their Chinese family. Our next consumer group is Miss Lou. This is the post-90s generation. So you're looking at an age range here of 24 to 34. Currently, it's a bit under an 8 million population base that we're targeting with this demographic. And we're looking at incomes, so we're looking at population growing within to 2021 to 28.5 million. Huge focus for snack foods for this demographic, and largely this demographic are buying through different online and social media platforms. Next we have Mr. Zhao. Mr. Zhao, the post-2000 generation, so slightly younger than our previous generation, 15 to 24 years old. Currently, those who can afford the Australian product, we see is about 3 million people. But again, we see this growing to just around 10 million people by 2021. Snack foods, again, is a great target market. So we look at macadamia growth on a few slides earlier, things around chips, healthy snacking even, breakfast cereals, and again, buying through online and social media is key for this demographic. Our final consumer group is the retirees. Now these retirees, 55 years old, we see the current target demographic of about 2.3 million people, but importantly, we see this demographic growing to just under 24 million people, so nearly the same size as the Australian population we see in this bracket. We know China's got an ageing population, and this is indicative of the numbers that we're seeing around that. Now this consumer group, looking for beverages, nuts, wine, and functional foods, foods that have a call out for helping solve certain products, certain problems, certain health issues. Generally, this consumer is buying in the traditional retail supermarkets, hypermarkets, as well as buying your product from overseas, whether it be on an overseas trip themselves or when one of their family members heads over to Australia to buy food on behalf of them. So we're going to look now at some market snapshots. The guide that we produced, which you can download through the AUSTRADE website as well as through the AFGC, presents some great market insights and some great market research. But I want to try and show you a few ways of maybe doing that same or similar research to get a market understanding from your desk. So here I've gone to Google Translate, which generally speaking we don't recommend in terms of a translation tool. If you keep the translation fairly simple and make it one word or two words, the results can be fairly accurate. So what we've done here is Australian Oats. We have our Chinese translation, which I've copied, then taken it over to Timor, and I've dropped it into the Timor search function there, and instantly I'm able to see what Timor deems to be the most relevant products for my search. At the top of the screen here, in the yellow box, we have the brands that Timor has deemed to be the most relevant. So I'm getting an understanding of which brands Timor sees are the main operators within this category. Down where the red box is, we're seeing the monthly transaction figure for that one product. And with the blue box next to it, we're seeing the number of comments for the product. I'll talk about them on this next slide. But straight away, I'm getting an understanding of the market price, the average monthly transaction figures, as well as those key brands that are in market. When I press on one of the item pages, I'm able to see that red box again where the comments per product are. Now, if I press on that, I can actually go down and view the comments that have been left by the consumers. And often there's some gold in there for us as brands and product producers. There'll be some keywords that the consumer is using to mention and describe the product. There's often images and videos that the consumer has taken as the product has arrived. Now, not all the comments should be taken to be 100% honest. However, it's important to note that a fair degree and a high degree of these comments that are left there will be of a positive and accurate nature. So next I want to talk about how we go about getting our product into China. There's a number of different models and ways that we can use as a pathway to take our Australian-made produce into China. General trade is generally the preeminent way of gaining access into an export market. And with this model, we're looking at getting market approval, shipping our consumer product over. It goes into storage, it gets customs clearance, there'll be some sampling, some testing of this product, there's a quarantine clearance process. That product is then able to enter the Chinese market legally. This is the way in which we recommend, where possible, all Australian food be looked to invest their time into. This is also the way in which producers can engage with businesses in a B2B model in terms of hotels, restaurants, and supermarkets. The next model, and this is a model we've seen pop up more recently, is the free trade zone or the bonded zone model. And this sees product being consolidated in Australia, shipped over to market, moved into a bonded warehouse. From there, an order is placed in China for the product. The product is then picked and packed, goes through a customs clearance, and then is delivered to the consumer. And this is a model that works really well for food groups that don't have market access to China. They can't use that previously mentioned general trade model. This offers a good way and a reliable way of market access. The other option within that is the direct mail model. And this works for products that can hold a value and be shipped directly from Australia. So an example of this might be a high cost Manuka honey product that has enough margin in there to cover the cost of shipping and isn't too big a product that makes the shipping cost too exuberant. So in this model, we have someone in China place the order online. The product is picked and packed in Australia, then shipped to market, goes through a free trade zone, is customs cleared, and then delivered to customer. Again, another great way for a product that doesn't have general market access to gain access in a B2C model over in China. Final model that we look at would be the Daigou model. A lot of people often ask us, what is a Daigou? Really, this is someone who's buying on behalf of someone in China. So this is where we see a Chinese national or a Chinese student or a Chinese associate here in Australia who would go to a major supermarket or a chemist and buy the product themselves. They will pick and pack that product, ship it over to the market. We see a more random customs approval process for this particular model, and then it goes on to be received by the consumer. And the Daigou model is one that attracts significant media attention at the moment. Certainly, engaging with the Daigou directly can be a good way of engaging the Chinese market directly. However, it's a model by which we would recommend you put 100% of your focus in when going into the Chinese market. And to really support those stats, I want to highlight that the modern retailer still accounts for most of the packaged food and grocery sales in 2016 in China. So whilst we see online as a growth area, there's still a relatively low percentage of the overall retail side for packaged food and grocery into China. In terms of the supermarkets where you should be looking as an Australian manufacturer and brand, we've listed some of them here in terms of the premium supermarkets. So we have the China Resources, the Olay brand supermarket. Many of you will be familiar with that supermarket. Walmart have Sam's Club, and the Balian Group has the BHG premium supermarket across China. A lot of people focus on the number of supermarkets that might be in the premium sector. The key thing to remember here is that these are targeted purely to that high net wealth, the consumer that can afford Australian products. They're looking for the premium good. So we'd say not to worry too much about the number of outlets that they have, but more the fact that this premium supermarket connects importantly with your demographic that you're trying to sell Australian food to. So I look at selling our goods into China. In terms of the approval process that we need to go through, there was a restructure that occurred in 2018, in early 2018. We saw a number of the departments that sit within the approval process actually condensed and brought in from what was 6 overseeing bodies into 3. And some of those previous roles and responsibilities actually shuffled around a little bit. So it's important to look at which of these different groups you need to be focused on when you're getting the product into China. And it is unusual for a country that has gone through significant growth and significant improvement for these sort of consolidation to occur. With all these countries that go through rapid growth, there are times following that rapid growth for some improvement in efficiencies and consolidation of departments to occur. So with that, we see a lot of the focus needing to be on the GAC or the GACC. This is an existing bureau, but it's got a lot of expanded functions around food import following the recent changes. And essentially, this is going to be the key area for inspection and quarantine of imported products, collection of taxes, the administration of the free trade zone, and registration and filing for imported food enterprises. So the GAC, or the General Administration of Customs of China, is going to be one of the key areas as an exporter you'll be looking at for when you do market access for China and registering those products. I want to turn and talk a little bit about branding as you go into the Chinese market. Everyone knows about WeChat. WeChat is the single biggest platform in China. It's a bit like Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, all rolled into one with online shopping included. And we've looked at the different types of users of this platform, WeChat. The average age is around 26 to 35, generally trending towards those who have a higher income. So this is perfect for us as Australian exporters and food manufacturers. In fact, 35% of all mobile time is spent using WeChat in China, and nearly 40% use this as their number one source of news and information daily. As part of the guide, the Food and Market Beverage Entry Guide for China, we looked at the ways in which 35 of the most followed top food accounts use the WeChat platform. We looked at the different types of product information they're putting out there, as well as the number of times that they put the messages out there. So the products that we looked at with the most followers were Korean food, Japanese curry, condiments, instant noodles, fruit juices, sports drinks, energy drinks, nuts, cakes and cookies and biscuits. So a lot of crossover with some of our Australian products as well. We found the frequency in the publishing was about 2 to 3 messages per week. So certainly wasn't daily. There was certainly enough area in there for these WeChat accounts to engage with their high followers. What we found interesting was that 40%, or nearly half of the information that these brands put out to the users, was around product information, promoting new or existing products and general information about the product that they were selling into China. The other key thing was around 16% were recipes and tips. How do these consumers engage with the product that you're selling was one of the key focuses. It wasn't so much promotional campaigns, a lot more as information. And a lot of this information Australian brands already have. And getting that information translated and presented in a relevant format is one of the best ways that a business can try and engage with those Chinese consumers. Key opinion leaders. Now these we all know exist within China, and there's certainly avenues where we can see some success. So the key opinion leader is essentially a sort of a celebrity who will endorse products. Now usually they do this for a fee, We are seeing some slight changes with our KOL model where they're actually the ones selling it, the product as well, and actually taking a percentage of the sale of the products. So more and more, they're investing in the products that they are trying to sell. You can spend anywhere from, one of the A-list KOLs, and the cost per post might be anywhere between 70,000 renminbi to 150,000 renminbi. So if you divide that by 3, that's up to maybe 30,000. Sorry, divided by 5, you're up to about 30,000 Australian dollars per post for using an A-list KOL. However, there's a lot of other lower cost options that can have a lot of niche followings that can be just as relevant for your brand. So if we look at, say, an industry-specific leader, a price per post being between 3,000 to 5,000 renminbi. So this can drop it down to maybe $1,000 per post from an industry-specific leader about your product. Generally, they have around 20,000 plus followers. Or if you want to go a little bit lower and save some more budget or spread the budget around to a few different grassroots influencers who might have about 8,000 followers, this can cost anywhere between 1,500 to 2,500 renminbi. Again, dividing that by 5 can see about a $500 investment use some key opinion leaders in market. There are a lot of agencies out there who offer a lot more support and guidance on this, and AUSTRADE are very well placed to introduce you to some of these agencies as needed. So I want to talk about some of the ways in which government are assisting with getting into market. So we saw CHAFTA being signed in 2015, and under CHAFTA we've seen a lot of different tariffs heavily reduced. In fact, we've seen in terms of wine, tariffs being completely eliminated from the 1st of January in 2019. Same with seafood, and many processed foods being eliminated by the 1st of January 2019. Across the next few years, we'll see the tariffs around beef and dairy also continue to slide. It's no surprise that we've seen a direct correlation with CHAFTA being implemented and more Australian produce entering the market and being appealing in terms of a price and competitiveness in that market. Many of the countries that you'll be competing against with market entry to China do not have the free trade agreements that Australia has. So what other services does AUSTRADE offer? There are a number of shows within markets that AUSTRADE are supporting. Coming up in May in Hong Kong, we're involved in the HOFEX show, and the following week at the CIAL event in Shanghai. Later in the year, we'll be at the CIIE event in November in Shanghai, and there's some other specific niche events around wine, seafood, and horticulture that the AUSTRADE team will be assisting with in market. EMDG is another way in which AUSTRADE can help companies export. EMDG is essentially a way of offering companies up to 50% back in terms of reimbursement of money that is spent in market to build that brand. If you're interested, I suggest you go to the EMG sections of the AUSTRADE website and you can watch a webinar or phone up EMDG to ask specific questions relevant to your business. But it's not just me who works onshore here for AUSTRADE. We have a very large agribusiness and food team who are all ready and willing to help you increase your exports, not just to China, but around to the world. AUSTRADE has 84 offices in 50 countries around the world, and we're all here ready to connect you with those offices. So certainly feel free to look up who is the most relevant person on this page and reach out to them and ask for that assistance that you need. When we look at China specifically, we have a number of people across China, ranging from Shanghai, Beijing, Guangzhou, Shenzhen, and right into Western China with Chengdu. There's a number of people here. In fact, we have so many in China, we had to fit them across 2 pages. I highly recommend that you reach out to someone in your area and ask them for that help that you might want in market, whether it be regulatory, distribution, or any other service that we can help provide in market. Just want to end here. Thanks so much for watching. I hope this has been of use to you. Please feel free to email me on chris.morley@austrade.gov.au, as you see on the screen, or ring my mobile 0433 589714. I'd really love to help you get your Australian product into market in China. Please, I hope you take some time to download the Food and Beverage Market Entry Guide for China through either the AUSTRADE website or the AFGC website. Thanks once again. I hope this has been beneficial for you.